Assalamu alaikum. Today we will discuss the law of rape, which is being enforced in Pakistan. Now we will start from its history, and we will talk about the major amendments in it. Now, in the recent case at motorway that has happened, it has basically set the public alight, and they are now asking for what is the law, why are convictions not happening, and we need to understand the law itself before we do anything else. So the first thing we need to understand that the law was governed by the British PPC, which was section 375 and 376, and it was amended three times. Three major amendments happened in the law. The first was General Ziaul Huq's infamous Hudud Ordinance 1979, and then of course there was the Women Protection Bill 2006 and the Women Protection Bill 2016. Now, during the period of General Ziaul Huq, he basically enforced the Hudud Ordinance 1979, which repealed Section 375 and 376 and made of the offense of zina through Hudud Ordinance Zina Bil Jabr, Section 6 and Section 7, and it had some of the strictest forms of evidences out there. You see, you couldn't report it right. There was no concept of marital rape, and it was really difficult to get a conviction at that period. And post which, you see, one of the major issues of course at that time were that at that time four witnesses became mandatory. So what we need to understand at this point is conviction became very hard because the courts had to revamp their entire law. All those cases that were ongoing had to be revamped, and in a patriarchal society this became very hard. And of course the conviction levels basically fell down. Now, of course, people point out that during his period there were few punishments that were handed out. However, what I would say was that they were token punishments. Not many were punished, and many got away. And this is a fact known. Now, what we need to understand is that during that period we became pretty infamous about it. So the first act that came up was Women Protection Bill 2006, which basically removed Section 6 and 7 from the Hudud Ordinance and brought back Section 375 and 376 of the PPC. And it actually made convictions a bit more easier. You see, what they did was they removed a lot of those hurdles that were in place in their Hudud Ordinance. You see, they highlighted that a rape victim does not have to bring four witnesses, that the rape victim statement upfront will be taken on, and one of the major ones was that if that statement says that a rape had happened, then it will be taken that it had happened. And of course, then came the Women Protection Bill 2016, which was named the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2016, where any women which bring forth a charge shall not be convicted for adultery. Nobody can say, and then sexual history could not be brought as a defense. You couldn't say that, oh look, she sleeps with multiple men and now she's saying rape. This couldn't happen. And this actually revamped the entire legal system and made convictions very easier. And it was during this period that what we talk about, the DNA evidence that came up. Now, DNA evidence in Pakistan has secondary nature. It is not primary evidence. It is secondary evidence. It is corroborative. You see, the primary evidence is still the witness statements, and I'm going to go get to the witness statements as well. So hold on that. Now, DNA evidence is part of our evidentiary law. However, it is corroborative in nature, and the thing is, the courts are right now forced to stretch the law a lot. They are forced to expand it. In a lot of cases that I've mentioned below, this came up like in Zulfikar Ali versus the state. You see, we saw the court once again stretch the DNA evidence. They highlighted that since the version of the victim's story was fully supported by her mother, who was aware of the abuse, and their statements were found convincing and corroborated by the DNA test, so punishment was handed. A conviction had happened. Then there was Imran Ilyas Manu versus the state, where a woman was kidnapped and raped, and an FIR was launched with a delay of 8 days. However, you see, the DNA evidence matched, the medical examination evidence matched, so they highlighted that it does not matter. Conviction was done. In one of the major cases that happened was PLD FSC 1 2013, where the court basically stated that DNA evidence has extreme importance in a case. And in another case, there was Shakil Nawaz versus the state, where the court was forced to actually refuse to rely on a DNA report because and acquitted the accused. Why? Because again, it is secondary nature. You see, so in these cases, I highlighted both where the court stretched the law and both where the court was limited by the law. Why? Because its secondary nature, it is seen as a form of expert opinion. While it is given greater importance to an expert opinion that you would say like handwriting and the others. However, DNA alone cannot create a conviction, and this is very important. However, there is a ray of hope in landmark judgments like the 2013 SCMR 2003. The courts openly stated that DNA test must be done quickly, it must be done in an immediate fashion, and a register should be kept of all the DNA samples. And they highlighted that female magistrates, female police officers, they must do it. And if a victim does not want to come into the court, then get a statement on camera. They did all that. So we have a problem where the DNA is important, but it is secondary in nature. You see, we talk about that the rapists are not convicted. Well, DNA evidence is secondary. This is a major problem in these cases. And when you have this important piece of evidence as secondary in nature, people will be able to avoid conviction. Now, I'm going to come up to the next aspect as we talked about. And before I go, let me tell you that DNA evidence basically comes in section 129 of the Kanun-e-Shahadat ordinance. So as I talked earlier, that I'm going to talk about eyewitnesses and witness statements. Now there are of course other forms of evidences as well. You see, where the courts basically stated that first of all, a victim's statement is very important and a conviction can happen based on that statement. So you see, you don't need four witnesses. A victim can be her first statement is enough to convict a person. You see, and of course, then we talk about, okay, what about other witnesses? Well, if you really want those four witnesses to come up, that's very easy. The court has made it very easy at this point. You see, what they say is the victim is itself the first victim. Why? Because the statement is taken on merit. The second is the first person who discovered her. Irrespective of whether he saw it or not, it does not matter. The first person who discovered the victim. It can be anybody. The third was, in one of those cases, Daad Muhammad versus the state, the ASI and the medical officer, both of them were made witnesses. They said that both are witnesses, good enough. So the medical officer, that's your third witness. The ASI, the first IO, the first investigating officer, the one who wrote the FIR, all of them are added to the list. And if you actually look at a criminal case, you basically get 12 witnesses. You get like 12 witnesses automatically. You get the victim itself, the first discoverer, the medical report, the medical doctor, the ASI, the IO, the map maker, the recovery, the people that went with the recovery, other witnesses. You get, I've seen a lot of witnesses in many cases. Witness is not a problem. You see, people often think the myth is that we need four witnesses, standing over there that have seen the rape happen. That's a lie. That is a myth, and that is absolutely false. You do not need four people to witness a rape to get a conviction. In fact, you don't need them at all. The victim's own statement is taken on merit. And in fact, I've seen in various cases, like I said, in 2013 FSC 1, it was held by the federal Sharia court that a victim's own statement alone is enough to get a conviction. If the DNA and medical report corroborates, it's a conviction. So even if it has been highlighted repeatedly, and I have no idea why people often say that Pakistan needs four male witnesses. We don't need them. This is absolute false. And in fact, this also empowers 129 to add in, okay, if the victim, this was done in 2016 amendment, as I talked about, women empowerment bill, where it empowered in section 129 that if the victim provides a statement that there was no consent, it will be seen that there was no consent. Doesn't matter what the other guy says, there was no consent. And of course, we need to understand that Women Protection Bill 2006 and 16, both of them empowered the evidences. So this is a myth that we need four witnesses. and that we need all of them, and they have to be witnesses who basically saw the case. You see, 2013 FSC basically ended the concept of four witnesses. It highlighted that it must be one victim's own statement, and FSC basically, what I can say is, stamped the law. It basically stamped a precedent. Courts were doing that long before. Courts were basically convicting rapists on single statements. This is part of our evidence system. This is how we basically do it. And of course, there is also the medical officer cannot in any way, this was done in Criminal Law Amendment Act 2016, that the medical officer cannot say no to the rape victim. Her medical must be done within 24 hours. The police will take, the medical officer must do it, and if they don't, then a criminal case is opened against them, which can lead to 2 years punishment, extended to 2 years punishment with a fine. So the second question that has been ongoing over here is whether our rapists get death penalty. So is death penalty part of the rape? You see, these people have been going on all the time, and the government has basically rode on the people and made very foolish statements that they're going to introduce capital punishment to rape law. Well, to them, I would basically say that they need to read 376(1), which basically has punishment for rape as capital punishment. You see, it says that whoever commits a rape shall be punished with death or a imprisonment which cannot be less than 10 years and no more than 25 years, and of course there's also fine. And in 376(2), you'll get rape committed by two or more persons, like gang rape. And this was done in several cases, like the famous Zainab murder reference number 26 2015, the state versus Khalid Hamid, where the rapists were given death evidence. And the funny thing is, they were given death capital punishment as tazir, not as had. You see, they were given as tazir. It was basically done in a very easier fashion, and it must be stated. Sorry. And of course, then we have the murder reference with case number 80 2008, where the accused was sentenced to death by the session court. And you know what? It must be stated that it has been done repeatedly in Pakistan, that in rape cases, capital punishment has been awarded. And the only point where capital punishment is not awarded is in pornography racket, where the maximum punishment is 14 years. So if any death penalty is to be introduced, then it will be done over there. And then of course we enter the part where people talk about public hanging, and it has become a bit of a fad to talk about public hanging whenever such cases happen. So it must be stated that in 1994 SCMR 1028, the court stated that public hangings were against Article 14 of the Constitution of Pakistan 1973, Article 14, and it was also against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Islam, where a charter was passed by world leading Muslim scholars in 1980 in London. And this charter basically declared that torture, which again public hanging is seen as a form of torture, is against Islam. So the court highlighted this, and this has been highlighted. You see, what we need to do is we need to understand these laws so that we can give proper amendments and proper changes to law, like making DNA primary evidence, creating special courts, making the procedure more summary, any form of proper change. Bringing and suggesting such things won't help. Suggest proper change, proper amendments, so that we can create a proper system. And that can only be done if we pressurize the government to pass proper amendments to law. So this was basically the entire law of rape in Pakistan. And if you like the video, then please leave a comment and share and like. And if you want to see more videos as such, then please subscribe to the channel. So until next time, goodbye.